Monitor the chats.
Got it.
Okay, let me see here. Let me turn off. All right, guys, we are live on the Angle of Pursuit YouTube page. With me, as always, is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? I can't wait to talk about these rookies in this draft class. I think there's a lot of guys that could make huge impacts in their first year in fantasy.
Absolutely. And to help us break it all down from DraftSharks.com is Jared Smola. What's up, Jared?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me back on. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I thought this was a great rookie class before the draft, and I think it got better post-draft because I just think a lot of guys landed in really awesome spots, whether just being good fits in the offenses they landed in or just good spots for immediate opportunity.
Yeah. There seemed to be a lot of everybody's, all of us fantasy analysts, we want, let's put this player on this team. This will be great. And then we'll be able to get all this fantasy production, and rarely does it ever pan out. But I think this time, to your point, actually might have panned out even a little bit better than we could have hoped. But before we jump into that, while we let people kind of filter in, ESPN announced today that Taysom Hill is going to be a tight end in their game. Does that matter to us? Do we care? Jared, is there any value there or potential value there?
I don't think I projected Taysom Hill last year. I guess this year I'll have to.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the Saints yet. I can't imagine he's going to be projected to score enough fantasy points to be fantasy relevant, unless you think his role is going to grow even further from what it was last year, which I guess is possible after they paid him all that money.
Yeah, I figure between paying him the money and having the Jameis contingency plan in case Breeze gets hurt, then they could be a little more aggressive, utilize him, and then and maybe not even like a weekly starter, but Brian, maybe he's a guy that we talk about as, this is a great matchup. There's an opportunity here. Maybe, Michael Thomas is banged up and not playing that game, and we can find ways to kind of maximize his potential.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see him slotting in and getting a little more looks as a receiver, just with they didn't really do much other than Emmanuel Sanders on the outside, and Jared Cook is kind of, he's getting up there in age, and they seem to want to get Taysom Hill the ball a lot, just any ways possible. And I think we see a little more goal line carries with him taking the snaps and running with Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara in the backfield with him. So I think there is a possibility as a bye week fill-in for him to produce some decent numbers.
For sure. And Jared, we kind of kicked it around. Obviously, you haven't gotten to Tampa Bay, I'm sure, if you haven't gotten to New Orleans, but what's your initial read on the Gronk situation? Obviously, he's 50 pounds lighter than he normally is. It doesn't mean, who knows when we'll actually have a season. So I'm sure he's definitely capable of doing that. But is he a guy that you assume will be in your top 10, 12? Where do you see him at?
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to say this with Taysom Hill too, is it doesn't take a whole lot to be fantasy relevant at tight end. So, I mean, I would guess Gronk's going to land inside my top 12. I'm sort of curious to see where he's going in drafts. If he's being picked as a top 6 guy, I'm probably out. But if I can get him in the lower end, tight end 1 territory, I think he's definitely worth a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a ton. I'm curious to get some best ball ADP and stuff coming up. But I have seen some dynasty trades where he's going as a late first or early second round. He's basically going for a late first or early second round pick, which I think is good value if you can get it, especially if you're a team that's looking to rebuild. But without further ado, let's jump in. Welcome to the Angle of Pursuit podcast. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You always follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. Brian Twining. We are here to talk some Dynasty, some rookie drafts, and Jared Smola is here to help us do it. So I was going to do a random draft order to see who goes first, but Jared, since you're the guest, you get the honor of the one-on-one. So and for everybody scoring at home, we're gonna do half PPR. This is not super flex. So I want to, and I know Jared said, in PPR I'm gonna go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and standard I'm gonna go with
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, so we're gonna go half PPR. And we're gonna put the bullseye in your head and let you go. Yeah. So you have the first pick. Tell me who your 101 is.
Yeah, and if you have 101, even in full PPR, and you can trade down to 102, even to pick up anything else extra, I do it because these guys are so close for me. But I do have Clyde Edwards-Helaire number 1 in PPR, and in half PPR, that'd be my lean right now too. And I think the only way he would have ended up number 1 in my rankings is if he went in the first round to the Chiefs, and that's exactly what happened. And so he has the draft capital. He's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the first running back an Andy Reid team has ever taken in the first round of the draft. I think everyone at this point has heard the Brian Westbrook comparison. Andy Reid thinks that, Edwards-Helaire is a better version of Brian Westbrook. Brian Westbrook played under Reid for 8 seasons. He went over 1,200 total yards 5 of those 8 seasons. Andy Reid just throughout his career has produced awesome fantasy numbers from his lead running back. He's had a top 16 PPR running back in 16 of his 21 seasons. He's had a top 10 running back in 10 of his 21 seasons. And again, this is the biggest draft investment Reid has ever made in a running back. So I expect Edwards-Helaire to come in right away and be the lead back. Not a 300 touch guy, but I think I have him projected right around 220 touches with like 50 of those being catches. So I think right out of the gate he can flirt with RB1 numbers in PPR and maybe just below that in half PPR.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. As you mentioned, the draft capital is really important. And I guess before we keep going on him, in general, like obviously you want to see that draft capital, you want to see the team investment, but when you're kind of picking, splitting hairs and deciding you're doing your rankings for rookies or whatnot, how important is that draft capital to where you kind of ultimately fall in these players?
Yeah, it's important. I think if you look historically, draft capital is probably more correlated with fantasy production than anything else. It doesn't necessarily mean that players better. It's just if you're picked high, you're going to get opportunity. You're going to get more prolonged opportunity, even if you struggle out of the gate. So yeah, draft capital definitely impacts my rankings when I'm going from pre-draft to post-draft.
For sure. And Brian, I think. Like Jared said, there's a couple guys, and if you went any of the directions, I don't think it's crazy to say, and that's why trading back probably makes a lot of sense if you have someone who's really strong and wants to come up and pay for that pick. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Damian, we talked about it a few times, but the Damian Williams experience, like they've been trying to replace him, and they're throwing different options, and they brought in LaShawn McCoy, and here goes Andy Reid again. So I think he's a great fit in this offense. I think he's going to do a lot. And obviously the Chiefs were in a spot where they had so much talent all over the field that they could be a little more aggressive and kind of find a guy that fits their offense so perfectly.
Yeah, I actually think he slides into probably the largest workload of the top 3 backs there, just kind of because how you alluded to how they've been trying to replace Damian Williams. I mean, they even brought Spencer Ware back, who he was kind of non-existent through most of last season. In regards to what he's looking at in terms of touches, we're not looking at like a 20 touch a game guy, but just the fact that their offense is so explosive, him averaging about 15 touches a game is pretty high, and the fact that they're going to be in the red zone a lot, I think I could see him putting up double-digit touchdowns as a rookie, even with, say, a shared workload with Damian Williams.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that, and it's definitely makes a lot of sense. So, Brian, I'll let you take the second pick. You have the 102. Where are you going?
Well, I mean, during the draft, I obviously made it clear that my top running back was Jonathan Taylor, so one would think that I would go with him here, but I think I would probably go with DeAndre Swift just because I feel like Detroit is kind of over the Kerryon Johnson experiment, and they're just they want to see somebody different in the backfield there. I think Swift was the second back off the board. I think Jonathan Taylor has a little more competition for touches. I mean, you got Marlon Mack there, who's plenty serviceable, and Nyheim Hines, who is more than likely going to fulfill that kind of Austin Eckler kind of role for Phillip Rivers. So I think the receptions might be limited for Taylor in his first season. And I see Swift more of, getting a lot more looks out of the backfield as a receiver. So I would go his direction here with the possibility of him taking over for Kerryon.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jared, I know you were tweeting out some stuff earlier, so hit us with those nuggets. But not a direction I would have gone, but I totally get it.
Yeah, I have Dobbins. I have DeAndre Swift like 6th overall. He's my running back 4 actually post draft. I mean, Matt Patricia came from New England. He's talked openly about preferring a committee backfield, and I still like Kerryon Johnson. I think DeAndre Swift's probably better. I would bet on DeAndre Swift having more touches, having more fantasy points right out of the gate, but I do think it's going to be a committee backfield. I mean, I don't want to read too much into this, but Detroit also spent a 5th-round pick on Jason Huntley, who's sort of an undersized pass-catching back. I don't know if he's going to be involved this season, but that just sort of, speaks more to the fact that I do think it's going to be a committee. And DeAndre Swift, I was never convinced he was a 300, even a 250 touch guy at the NFL level, even before the draft, because he never reached 200 carries in a season at Georgia. I think he might be more of that 200 carry, 30 to 40 catch guy in the pros. And I think that's the role the Lions probably envision for him.
Yeah, I mean, his best case scenario is like an Alvin Kamara, right? Like a guy that is a part-time player that's super explosive. That obviously, if he hits that ceiling, like that's amazing. But we also, we're comparing the New Orleans offense to Detroit. And as much as I like some of the pieces Detroit has and the potential if Stafford returns with Golladay and Hawkinson and whatnot to be much better, it's still Detroit. And so I get the Swift. I like him. I liked watching him at Georgia, but he's my 8th overall player, my RB4 as well. So that's where I'm at. I feel like you could
balls to the wall, gentlemen.
Well, hey, if you like Swift though,
if
you like Swift, trading back is going to be key for you because I think you can get him at 103, 104 and be very happy and get assets in the process.
Yeah, and we're talking about a guy who most people had as their RB1 pre-draft.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's certainly not crazy to think he just comes in and sort of pushes Kerryon aside.
Well, and that's the thing too is like we have these pre-draft rankings and then we watch the draft and then some people will take them and basically throw them out the window and it's like, what'd you do all the work for? Why'd you put in all that time? Why'd you have all these thoughts? If as soon as they go to a team and it looks like it might be a little murky, like Kerryon Johnson hasn't played football in basically a year. Like what do we know what he's gonna do? Is he gonna return to full health? He still had issues and question marks kind of even before he got injured. So it wouldn't be shocking to see DeAndre Swift kind of take over the lead role, maybe get 60-70% of the touches, and then Kerryon just be kind of a complimentary back. But as you mentioned with Patricia, you never know. But that could change next year. He could be out the door and we could see a whole nother offense. I'm going to keep the wild cards coming with my 103, and I'm going to take J.K. Dobbins. My number 1 running back in this class. I love him. I think he can be involved as a pass catcher. I think he's a tremendous runner. And I love the fit in Baltimore. I think he is the starting running back next season. I think this year he's a part-time performer. So in redraft leagues, I'm probably not going to be quite as optimistic about him. That said, if I can get him in the right range, what do you think's fair, Jared? 6th round, like 7th round? Do you think I can get a better value than that if you're talking redraft for JK?
Yeah, I just did my projections for him today. I think he came out in the low 30s based on his PPR points and where that would have landed him last year. And I tweeted it out too, and I said he has upside well beyond that. So I think ideally in redraft, I'd want Dobbins as my RB4, someone I'm not relying on week to week. But again with the upside, I'd be fine with him as running back 3. I think he's going to come in right away and see basically at least the Gus Edwards role, which Gus Edwards carried like 130 something times last year. So you're talking 8 to 10 carries per game out of the gate. Mark Ingram, I've always been a huge fan. He's going to turn 31 this coming December. I think it's, about time where, he's going to hit the wall. So I wouldn't be surprised if even over the second half of the season, Dobbins sort of emerges as the lead guy.
Yeah. Like right now I'm doing my projections as well. I have him penciled in for about almost 150 rush attempts, 700 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns. And then I think he can be involved in the passing game as well. So, I'm pretty optimistic. Like, I think he's a guy that like I traditionally like to wait on running back. So if I can get him as a guy with upside and then take some more safety guys, even if it means taking them later, and taking Dobbins earlier, I'm happy to do that. But as a dynasty asset, like I'm so comfortable taking this guy as my 101. I think the upside is absolutely there. And like I mentioned, if you look at Mark Ingram's contract situation, they can easily cut bait after the season, and he could be the feature back with Lamar Jackson, and we know how important that can be. Brian, how we feeling so far through 3 picks?
I feel good, man. I got a running back. I like DeAndre Swift's potential. Like you said, if they somehow decide to go a different direction than Patricia, I think we're looking at an offense that would probably take shape as more somebody who would be looking to utilize one guy as opposed to a rotation, and that would kind of propel Swift into the lead role.
Especially with Trevor Lawrence under center next year.
He's going to be playing in New England.
Oh, I can't wait. All right, Jared, we'll go back to you. It's like a regular rookie draft. You're back on top again. Where are we going with the 104? I think you're pretty happy with.
You guys let me get JT at 104.
Yeah,
and I'm ecstatic. I think people are still underrating how good this guy is as a ball carrier. Averaged 151 rushing yards per game over his 3 seasons at Wisconsin, 6.7 yards per carry. We know he blew it up at the combine, tested as a 90th percentile spark guy. Obviously, the knock, and I guess ball security is knock. I don't ever worry about that stuff. I think it's a bit random, and I think it can definitely be corrected. We've seen plenty of guys, Tiki Barber comes to mind, who couldn't hang on to the ball, then he got that fixed. So I'm not worried about that. Yep. The concern with Taylor is the pass catching. I'd say he's unproven as a pass catcher. I don't know if he's incapable as a pass catcher. He did have the 26 catches, 252 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. He was actually 14th among draft eligible running backs in yards per route run, according to Pro Football Focus. He was ahead of guys like DeAndre Swift and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think there's pass catching upside there, but you're drafting him for the rushing upside. I think this is a guy capable of winning NFL rushing titles in the next couple of years now, especially in this spot in Indy behind that offensive line. I think it was a top 5 O-line last year. They're returning all 5 starters for 2020. So I think Taylor's going to come in and sort of push Marlon Mack aside and sort of be the clear lead ball carrier right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think that is the question. There is, and I was reading Bill Barnwell's article about 32 players that could be cut, and he mentioned Marlon Mack as the Colts option, and it's a lot of times they're trying to put find a player that would be reasonable, and I mean if they like Hines, we talked, Brian, you mentioned Nyheim Hines. He's a guy that as a pass catcher you really like, and would be a great complement to what Jonathan Taylor wants to do. The 2 guys would make a lot of sense. I guess my concern I have 2 concerns, I guess. If Marlon Mack stays, what does that kind of share look like? Initially, it may be a little more 50-50, but, Jonathan Taylor is a stud. But Marlon Mack's shown a lot when he's healthy, when he's on the field. And then what does this team look like post Phillip Rivers? Because obviously I like the idea of Rivers being there and what he could do. And, we'll talk Michael Pittman, hopefully, and kind of the way the offense is shaken up. But there's also a scenario where they're going to a rookie quarterback and the offense isn't coming quite as nicely. But with that offensive line and with Jonathan Taylor's talent, I get people taking him as their 101, and I wouldn't fault anyone who does that.
I could completely agree with that. As we were talking, during the draft, I had Jonathan Taylor as the best running back in the class, just as a pure runner, and kind of like Jared said, he wasn't really used in the passing game, but we did see him get increased looks this past season, and it's not like he was inefficient by any means. They just didn't run an offense that threw to the running back at all. So I think he's kind of like you said, he's unproven, but I don't think it's something that he's not capable of.
Yeah, good old Wisconsin quarterbacks. They can't really throw it. So
yeah, I mean Melvin Gordon didn't put up big pass catching numbers at Wisconsin, and he's turned into a above average pass catching back as a pro.
Oh, totally, and that I could totally see 30 to 40 catches within his first couple of years as a season long.
That's all you need when you're rushing for 1,500 yards.
Yeah, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, add another 20, 30 catches, you're golden. You're looking at RB1 for sure. All right, Brian, you're back on the clock. Are we gonna keep this running back train going, or are we gonna switch up positions?
No, I'm going to go with the pick that I kind of lamented during the draft and I was very upset about, but I think I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb. I mean,
Wow.
out of all the receivers, I think he's the most skilled. I think he's stepping into a situation where, although he's kind of the third option right now, his skill set is set to be able to break off huge gains. I mean, even if he's only getting 5 to 6 looks a game, he's bound to break one every other week. And then eventually we'll see what the Cowboys do with Michael Gallup if they decide that they want to go with Cooper and Gallup. CeeDee Lamb's or with Cooper and Lamb. Lamb steps into probably taking over for Cooper as the number one guy. And if they lock up Dak, I mean, we're looking at a guy that's going to be putting up 100 catches, 1,500 yards, fairly soon in the Big D.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I think obviously on draft night we look at this team in sort of a narrow focus, and you go, oh, we have Cooper and Gallup, and what do you need another awesome receiver for? But like, I just started my Cowboys projections, and I'm looking at like Zeke, Amari, Gallup, and nothing else. Like, obviously we like Tony Pollard's potential and kind of throwing some stuff in, but I guess, Jared, where do you fall on this? Is Lamb your number one wide receiver? And kind of how much of an impact do you think he could have in an offense that has so many other pass catchers?
Yeah, Lamb's my wide receiver 1, and I have him 4th overall. So I like the pick from Brian here at 105. I mean, just talking about immediate opportunity, Randall Cobb saw 83 targets last year. Jason Witten leaves behind 83 targets. I'm not sure that's a number Blake Jarwin's going to get to. So I think there's a path to Lamb even hitting triple-digit targets this season. And just being in this passing game, I mean, this basically any metric you look at, this was a top 5 passing game last year. And I think with guys like Cooper and Gallup on the field, Lamb's efficiency should be awesome in Dallas. And then longer term, I think he's talented enough to emerge as Dallas's number 1 wide receiver, even maybe by 2021. And then Amari Cooper's contract, if you look at it, Dallas can get out of that pretty easily after 2021 if they want. And Michael Gallup's going to hit free agency at the same time. So, I mean, I think within 2-3 years, there's a decent chance Lamb is Dak Prescott's number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely want, because especially as Amari ages, if they decide to keep him around, I could see him kind of falling back as more of a second option in that offense with Lamb emerging. Like you mentioned, they could just cut bait with Amari completely and go with Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, I mean, Lamb was my number 1 receiver coming in. I like the fit, and as much as it kind of made us scratch our head a little bit, and easy to poke fun at Jerry, Brian, it's a good player in a really good offense, and the potential for him to be a fantasy monster is absolutely there.
Yeah, speaking of fantasy terms, I love it, but I mean, just as a Cowboys fan and somebody looking at so many other needs that the team needed to like win a championship, to me it just wasn't the right pick. But I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
I think Jerry Jones said he was like 6th on their board, right, overall. So I mean, it was definitely a best player available kind of pick, which I never think's a bad idea.
No, I mean, you can't go wrong taking the best player that you feel at that position, especially if he's ranked that high on your draft board and he's fallen all the way to 17th. I mean, you're getting great value out of that pick.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams are going to really regret, like the Jets, the Raiders, even San Francisco, like letting him go that far. Just imagine him and Debo like in San Francisco. Okay, looks like I am back on the clock. I'm in an interesting predicament. I think I'm going to start the wide receiver run going, and I'm going to take Jalen Reagor. Jared, guy I didn't like when I was watching some of his 2019 tape. You suggested I go back and watch some 2018 tape. Saw a guy I like. I love the fit. I love the potential in Philadelphia. Offense that clearly needs receiving help. Am I being too aggressive by taking Jalen Reagor here?
I don't think so. I mean, I do have Jerry Jeudy ranked ahead of him, but I have Reagor 8th overall, so I don't think you're too out of line here. Yeah, I was a fan of this guy pre-draft. He was my wide receiver 5. Actually had Reagor 1 spot ahead of Justin Jefferson. So I was happy when Philly took Reagor over Jefferson. Just beyond liking Reagor better, I think Reagor gives the Eagles more of what they need in that wide receiver core, which is speed. Yeah, like you said, Kyle, the 2019 was ugly. He had no shot with the quarterback play he was getting. But he broke out as a true freshman at TCU, had a huge 2018 season, tested well at the combine. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and the immediate opportunity is obviously there.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Ertz and Goddard, there's not a lot, and he kind of fits in, I think, with what they want to do, a little more, underneath passing game. Brian, Jalen Reagor in Philly, like, got to be excited, right?
I love the pick when they made it, just because how you just said, like, he fits exactly what they wanted to do and what they needed out of the passing game, because they got the two big guys running off the ends of the line of scrimmage, and they needed that guy on the outside who can kind of get open, which most of their receivers really struggled with. And we've seen Reagor; he's got great hands, creates good separation off the snap. Like, he's going to become Carson Wentz's favorite target down the field really quick.
Yeah, and they use that first round draft pick on him, so obviously they like him. They have a plan for him. Jared, what's your read on this Jalen Hurts stuff? Do you think he's a guy that is more of a impact, like Taysom Hill, use him gadget plays type stuff, or do you think this is a let's protect ourselves because Carson Wentz gets hurt every year?
I think it's more of the latter. I mean, it was a strange pick, especially after they invested so much in Carson Wentz. I know he's had injury issues, but I mean, when they're paying him what they are, you got to sort of be all in on Wentz being your guy. I don't know. I think that the Taysom Hill thing, Taysom Hill is such an exception to the rule. Like, I don't think we can bank on Hurts playing that big of a role for Philly. So it was a strange pick. I wanted to like Jalen Hurts as a dynasty sleeper just because of that rushing upside. But obviously in Philly, he's I think undraftable outside of 2 quarterback leagues.
Yeah. I think. Well, I don't know. Part of me, like in like a super flex, I'm always willing to take a shot on some of those kind of guys. But yeah, I think in regular dynasty, just 1 quarterback leagues, yeah, I'm 100% with you. Okay, Jared, you are back on the clock. Are we going to the Mile High City?
Yeah, I'm going Jerry Jeudy here.
Yep.
Tough choice between Jeudy and Cam Akers for me here, but I'm going to lean Jeudy. The landing spot, I think there's pros and cons. I mean, the target competition is pretty stiff with Cortland Sutton there, who really emerged as a stud last year, and then Noah Fant, who I think had an encouraging rookie season, and I expect to take a pretty big step forward. I mean, beyond that, though, I mean, KJ Hamler I like, but he's not going to be a high-volume guy. So I do think there's a pretty clear path for Jeudy to be right there with Fant as the second option in this passing game. The biggest question, obviously, is Drew Lock. We didn't get to see much of him last year. I think he sort of had an uneven career at Missouri. So he's still a major question mark. But, Jeudy, I can't rank him lower than I have him just because I think he's that good of a player. I mean, he was right there with CeeDee Lamb for me as the wide receiver 1 in the class. So again, I just think talent's going to win out here, and he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you in terms of him as a pass catcher, as a route runner. Like, he is exceptional, and I think he's a great complement to what Cortland Sutton does. Noah Fant's obviously there, but I do like KJ Hamler. I might be a little more optimistic. The Deshaun Hamilton experience is clearly not going to work, so they're trying another Penn State slot guy. But Brian, what's your read on this whole Broncos offense? I mean, Drew Lock, here's your shot, buddy. You got a loaded lineup. You got all these, you've been our Mr. Bronco, repping them hard. So talk to me about how this offense is shaking out.
I think Denver is really going to take the next step in as far as their offensive evolution this year with the draft selection of Jerry Jeudy. I think that's going to open up more opportunities for Sutton, who's not going to see as much over the top coverage. I think Judy's going to kind of demand a little more double coverage because he's a little bit of this quicker guy. Like, he's going to be able to get off the ball a little bit faster. Sutton's still going to be that over top, like, just throw those jump balls, which Drew Lock has the great arm for. Noah Fant is going to likely see a lot more opportunities just down the middle of the field, running those seam routes. I love the Broncos this year. I would even be willing to just wait till the end of the draft and take my chances with Drew Lock as my quarterback in a redraft league. I really think this is the year that they kind of show out, and we see them go from a 17, 18 point a game offense upwards into like the low 20s, 23, 24, just with the addition of Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, the second years of Fant because he's Sutton again. So yeah, I like the Broncos. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean their offense definitely has pieces. If they didn't have Melvin Gordon weighing them down, like think about how good they could be. Jared, have you done your projections for Denver and kind of how do you see this offense shaking out in year one?
I did do my projections, and Drew Lock's going to come up quite high in my quarterback rankings. I'm not sure I'd go as far as Brian saying he'd take him as his quarterback 1 in redraft, but I'm thinking best ball at this time of the year, and I think Drew Lock will be one of my favorite quarterback 2 targets. Even if he's inconsistent, I think the ceiling game should be there with these weapons. I just love how all these weapons fit together. You have Sutton, like the big bodied alpha. You have Judy, the separator. You have Hamler, the speed guy out of the slot. I see a lot of T.Y. Hilton in Hamler.
Mm-hmm.
T.Y. does a lot of his damage from the slot. And then you got Fant, and then you even got Albert Okwuegbunam, who if something happens to Fant, I think Albert O sort of can step into a similar role as that speedy tight end.
Yeah, we give John Elway so much shit for his drafting, but he's actually assembling a quietly nice little roster. So props to Elway. But yeah, Drew Lock, you're on the clock, buddy. Like you need to show it this year that you're the guy because there's gonna be. Do you think because they signed who'd they sign as their backup, Jeff Driscoll or something?
Yeah.
It seems like it would be a good spot to bring in like an Andy Dalton if they could swing it.
Yeah,
I know they paid him, but having somebody where if Drew Lock falters, just to have a reliable guy in there. Maybe I don't know. Cam Newton seems like a bit of a stretch at this point, but I mean he has to go somewhere. So I don't know.
I think Dalton makes sense. I mean we've seen him put up nice numbers with weapons around him. The other move that Broncos made this year was Pat Shurmur as offensive coordinator, which I like for the passing game. Shurmur's had some productive passing games in his NFL career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that another puzzle piece that seems to fit just right. We'll see what you got, Denver. Brian, you are back on the clock. Where are we going?
Well, I'm going to go with the first wide receiver off the board in the real NFL draft, and I'm going to go Henry Ruggs here, and I'm marrying myself to what's happening in Oakland. And if it's Derek Carr or whoever Gruden brings in, he's got his weapon that he's going to be able to throw the ball down the field to. And if they can get some sort of rapport going, he steps right into wide receiver 1 kind of opportunities because we saw Tyrell Williams. He's kind of a complementary piece. He's not the guy that could just kind of take over a receiving room. With Josh Jacobs back there, we all know teams are going to have to defend against the run because they're kind of built off the running game, and there are going to be a lot of opportunities for play action passes, which is going to leave downfield opportunities open, very similar to what Kansas City does with Tyreek Hill. So I love the opportunity to take a guy who can just run past everybody and just get open for big armed quarterback.
Jared, where are you at with Ruggs? Because obviously this is a guy, the first receiver off the board, so he's got the draft capital. A guy that was kind of in that second tier right behind Lamb and Judy for most people. But now he's a Raider. Now he's with Derek Carr. Like how excited can we get about him? Obviously has potential, has a ton of things that make you pop off the page, but I can't get quite good there.
So I spent most of the pre-draft process bashing Henry Ruggs. I think he was my wide receiver 7 pre-draft. Guys with his level of college production just don't tend to hit at the NFL level. And I know he played with a fellow first rounder in Jerry Jeudy and maybe 2 other first rounders next year in Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. But even factoring that in, I think Ruggs's college production was under what was it, 1.8 here, and I've seen Ruggs going in the early second round of some dynasty drafts. I think that's a fair price. I think I've gotten close to where everyone else is on Ruggs at this point. Like you said, he has the draft capital. He has an immediate opportunity to lead the Raiders in targets. I think Ruggs is a better fit with Derek Carr than you might assume because Henry Ruggs was not a downfield guy at Alabama. He only had 4 catches 20 plus yards downfield last season. He did his damage on short and intermediate stuff and then picking up yards after the catch. He averaged over 10 yards a catch last year. So, that's Derek Carr's game. So I think if the Raiders know how to use Ruggs, he actually could fit with Carr pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, we're relying on John Gruden, but yeah, he was a yak monster, and he has the ability to, as soon as he gets the ball in his hands, to flip a switch and be gone. And that there's a lot to like, and obviously, you know, the upside is there. But yeah, I'm closer to you. Like right now, I have him as my wide receiver 9, so that tells you how I feel about him. Yeah. Probably a little aggressively too low, but it's fine. All right, let's keep this train rolling. I'm with the 9th pick, and I think I'm gonna go with somebody that Jared mentioned, and that's Cam Akers, a guy that going into Florida State was highly touted. Obviously, that offense has been a mess for a couple seasons, and Cam Akers saw a lot of 8 and 9 man boxes, not a lot of opportunity to run the rock. But this is a guy that Devy owners will tell you that they've been stashing for a long time. I have a share myself. I think in terms of opportunity and in terms of fit, this is a great landing spot. I don't feel good about anybody that is in the Rams backfield as we speak. Gurley's gone. We'll see what some of those other pieces end up being, but I think Cam Akers can steal this job. I think he's good enough to do that. I think this offense should be still pretty good, even in a tough division. But I feel like if I can get Cam Akers at the back of the first, I'm pulling the trigger every time.
Yeah,
I think
Go ahead.
I think it's a great spot to take him at, just for kind of the value you're getting there, especially for the first couple of years. But I'd be a little worried just with kind of the Rams. We're seeing their offensive line is aging. They're losing some pieces. They weren't as successful towards the back end of last year. So that kind of that pizzazz that we saw out of the offense of the first year under Sean McVay is kind of worn off. Teams are kind of figured out how to defend against that little zone read, one cut offense that he was running with those 3 wides all the time. That would be my only concern back there. And then also we didn't really get to see Darrell Henderson a whole bunch. So I don't think we just see Akers take over immediately. So I could see them kind of feel it out and ride the hot hand early on. But at this point in the draft, I think it's a great value there.
Yeah, I agree. I have Akers 7th overall, so I think he's good value here. I'm with you, Brian. I think the biggest concern with Akers is the Rams' offense. I mean, I think a year ago at this time, we would have considered it, a top 5 offense in the league. I don't think we view it, and I don't think we should view it that way anymore. But I do expect Akers. I would bet on him leading this backfield in touches this season. Brian mentioned not seeing a lot of Darrell Henderson last year. I think that's just because the Rams didn't like anything he was doing. We'll see if he bounces back in year 2. I mean, I never viewed him as like a lead back anyways. I always thought he was, maybe half of a committee, more of a change of pace back. Akers has the lead back size. He handled pretty big workloads at Florida State. I think if Florida State's O-line wasn't so bad this past year, we might be talking about Akers, up in that J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, range of running back talent. So, I think this is a good spot for him.
Totally. Before we move on to the next pick, I just want to kind of pick your guys' brain. Obviously, the Rams drafted Van Jefferson. Josh Reynolds is there. Brandon Cooks is not. Jared, do you have a preference in terms of how this may shake out this season, or is this offense kind of taken a step back to the point where that third receiver isn't as appealing as they were in previous seasons?
Yeah, well, I think between the offense taking a step back and we saw the Rams start to go with more 2 tight end stuff in the second half of the season. And I think with Higbee's breakout and Gerald Everett was having a pretty nice season before he got hurt last year. So I think we're going to see more of that. So I think you're just going to see less of the targets head the number 3 wide receivers way. So I don't expect that guy, whether it's Reynolds or Jefferson, to be a fantasy factor this season without an injury to one of the top 2 guys.
Yeah, nice, Brian. I saw you shaking your hand. We're in lockstep there with Jared. I think.
The
second tight end is interesting.
Also, taking into account the division they're playing in, with Arizona's defense they're going to be much improved. Both San Francisco and Seattle, they have really good defenses as well. So this offense is they're kind of on the downturn. For especially a young running back and as a rookie wide receiver in Jefferson's case, you want to see an offense that's kind of looking to push the ball down the field and a little more aggressive, which they may kind of deviate from in his first year.
Yeah, plus the whole Jared Goff thing. So that Jared, you are back on the clock. You have the 10th overall selection. Who would you like?
Yeah, T. Higgins for me.
Woo.
He was one of my guys pre-draft. I like him just as much, if not more, post-draft. He was my wide receiver 3 pre-draft. I dumped him below Jalen Reagor post-draft just because Reagor got the first-round capital and the landing spot, I think, is a tad better. But I love T. Higgins' landing spot. I mean, I think he's going to come in right away, and I think he's the favorite to win the number 3 wide receiver job. He's going to have to beat out John Ross and Auden Tate. Longer term, though, we know AJ Green is on the 1-year franchise tag. It doesn't seem like he has a future in Cincinnati beyond that. John Ross and Auden Tate, speaking of them, they're only under Cincinnati's control through 2021. So, I think by next year, Higgins probably takes over for AJ Green as, the 1A, 1B along with Tyler Boyd. And, he's tied long term to Joe Burrow, who I think is going to be a stud at the next level.
Yeah. Burrow's ready to succeed. I kind of like the direction that offense is heading. And, even if AJ Green's I could see him being traded before the season starts. I could see him, injury bugs have been plaguing him. He missed a lot of last season. Obviously he could have came back. So he should be fine by the time we actually get going. But yeah, I love T. Higgins. I think obviously it was kind of a frustrating year in terms of production wise, but the talent isn't in question. Obviously, going in the second round and grabbing him means Cincinnati's committed to him being a huge part of what they do offensively, and fits really well with Tyler Boyd. And I think like you mentioned, it's a little more 1A, 1B than 1-2 in that offense. Brian, I think you were gonna grab him if he had fallen one more pick. So obviously, you're a fan as well.
Yeah, we were talking during the draft how much I liked T. Higgins. Just kind of he's that big-bodied guy who a lot of quarterbacks, especially young ones, are able to just kind of throw the ball in their vicinity and they can go up and make a play. They don't necessarily have to create those large windows to throw into. And we saw Burrow last year. He trusted his receivers enough to just kind of put it in their area, and these guys would go up and get it with Jefferson and all those guys and Helaire and Moss. So
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I like Higgins to step into a pretty substantial role right away, just like Jared was saying. And even if AJ Green is there, I could kind of see them phase him out of the offense just with he's kind of aging. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't seem interested in playing for the Bengals anymore. They kind of want to get their rookie quarterback with their rookie wide receiver going for the future.
Jared, I love too.
Go ahead.
I love too that the Bengals took T. Higgins 33rd overall because all day Friday they were getting trade offers for that 33rd pick, and they stayed there because they wanted to make sure they got T. Higgins. So to me that's basically him going in the first round. He basically got first round draft capital.
Yeah, and to your point, like this is a loaded wide receiver class. They could have easily said, okay, we'll move back a few picks, let you take whoever you want, and we'll be happy with whatever receiver happens to fall to us. Yeah. And they didn't do that. What's your read on this offense kind of in general, Jared? Obviously, last year was a lot of Joe Mixon, a lot of underwhelming offense. I think it's going to be a little different this year. Obviously, it's a rookie quarterback. Yep. You can only expect so much, but I think, we should be somewhat optimistic about how this offense could look.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wish they had done more to improve the offensive line. I mean, they are going to get Jonah Williams back, their first rounder last year after he missed his entire rookie season. So that'll help. The other thing, we're obviously dealing with all this coronavirus stuff. Who knows, what kind of off-season work we're going to get in. So that's going to be a factor with the rookie quarterback, but there's definitely upside with the offense. I mean, Tyler Boyd is a guy who I take in almost every draft I do just because no one likes him. He always seems to be sitting there in like the 7th round. Guy's, been a top 24 wide receiver in 2 straight seasons. I think he's a decent bet to land there again. And then, Joe Mixon, I think he's a top 8 running back talent-wise in the NFL. If they commit to getting him the ball, I think he's a running back 1 this season. So I think there's definitely pieces to like in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and if you have a Joe Mixon, if you have these offense to throw the ball to, it's going to make life a lot easier for Joe Burrow, even if it takes a little while to get there. Okay, Brian, you're back on the clock. Make your last pick of the first round.
I'm going to go with the other big wide receiver that got selected shortly after T. Higgins, and I'm going to go Michael Pittman. I was fascinated by him entering the draft. I felt like he could have been a guy that fell into the back end of the first round. I thought Cincinnati was going to go with him. and then Higgins was going to fall with Indianapolis, but I kind of projected one of those two guys going to Indy with Phillip Rivers, who has traditionally liked to have that bigger wide receiver that he can throw those crazy cowboy style jump balls to. I think he steps into like an immediate close to double-digit touchdowns for Indianapolis down in the red zone, as T.Y. Hilton will kind of take a step back in the offense, and he has clear shot to be the number one guy there.
He's already getting the Vincent Jackson comps. Phillip Rivers is going to absolutely love him. I'm a huge Michael Pittman guy. I go back and forth with Pittman and Higgins. Right now, I think I have Pittman one spot of Higgins, but I go back and forth. It's razor thin. Jared, where are you at with Pittman? Are you quite as optimistic as we are about him?
I have him. Let's see. I have him 15th overall in my rankings. I do prefer Higgins pretty easily. I like Higgins better as a player, and I just like that he has what at least looks like a better long-term quarterback situation, because who knows what Indy's going to look like even in 2021. I almost like Pittman better in redraft than for Dynasty, because I did see him as one of the more NFL-ready wide receivers, and like Brian said, he steps into a pretty nice opportunity for immediate targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Colts offense could be really nice, and obviously we've been craving for somebody to play opposite Ty for a long time, and now they got Pittman, and obviously a lot of reason to be excited. I guess I'll finish this off strong with Justin Jefferson, the LSU wide receiver. I think a guy that is going to step into Stephon Diggs' shoes pretty efficiently. Should be really reliable, should be able to do a lot in this offense. It's just, for me, it's going to be a question of kind of what the offense looks like over the next couple of years. If Kirk Cousins is the guy, and what that whole situation looks like, and how much running they're going to do. And now that Stefanski's in Cleveland, what does that offense look like? So Brian, obviously Justin Jefferson's fun, obviously opportunity this year, but where are we at with this Vikings offense kind of going forward?
It's not quite to the same level as the Rams, but as far as the passing game goes in Minnesota, I kind of saw it last year where they took the ball out of Cousins' hands. They really relied heavily on Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison, and all those guys in and out of the backfield. And I think we see like almost an increased amount of runs with them. I just don't have any trust in Kirk Cousins to be able to feed two wide receivers at a consistent rate. And then even when Thielen leaves, then you have the issue of Jefferson being the only target there. So he's going to be seeing a lot of cloud coverage, a lot of guys over top, a lot of bump. And Cousins is not very good at letting routes develop. Like he kind of folds in the pocket. So I don't know. I'm just worried about a situation more so than the player. And if for me, I would kind of be worried about that. But he's a great player. I think he's going to be really good. But yeah, it's the Kirk Cousins factor for me.
And Jared, kind of like, obviously I want to get your input on Jefferson, but this offense as a whole, obviously now they have another year for Irv Smith opposite Kyle Rudolph. Do we see more two tight end sets? Like, what is your kind of where you do see this offense going in 2020, 2021?
So I think that was just as much Gary Kubiak's offense as it was Kevin Stefanski's last year. And Kubiak's still there. So I don't expect a big change as far as run pass split or even two tight end usage, any of that stuff. I do think Justin Jefferson basically steps right into Stephon Diggs' role. I mean, Diggs led the team last year with 94 targets, and that was with Adam Thielen missing 4, 5, 6 games, whatever it was. So even as the number 2, or even if you're going to call Jefferson the 1B, I just don't think the target ceiling is that high, at least for 2020.
Yeah. No, at this point, I feel like it's good value. Now, let me ask you guys, Jared, I'll have you go first. Brian, I'll have you go next. Who's the one player that we didn't mention that if you were on the clock, you would be picking, or a guy that you potentially would take at the back end of the first round?
Yeah, so my top 11 are all gone. My number 12 guy is Denzel Mims.
Okay.
And he waited longer to hear his name called than I thought he was going to. He ended up going in the late second round. I thought he might be an early second rounder, but I like the landing spot with the Jets. I still believe in Sam Darnold. I don't believe in Adam Gase. So, the quicker he can get out of there, the better. But I do think Denzel Mims, has the potential, a pretty clear path to emerge as, Sam Darnold's long-term number one target. We know Mims has the size, athleticism, has a pretty good college production profile. Those Baylor wide receivers scared me. Like I was a huge Corey Coleman fan. He burned me bad. I don't remember the last time there was, a really successful Baylor wide receiver. So that's the concern. But again, at this point of a dynasty draft, I think you're looking for upside, and I think Mims has that.
Yeah, Mims is a guy I can't get behind. I won't have any shares. I get Josh Doxson 2.0 vibes. As you mentioned, the Baylor receiver. It's just in the hype train got built so early on Twitter. Whenever there's a hype train behind somebody, it never seems to pan out. So when you take that and the Baylor receiver, and I'm with you on Darnold. I think there is still potential there. Obviously, they have to fix their offensive line. Obviously, they need to fix their Adam Gase problem. Like I saw a stat on Twitter. It was like every offense that Adam Gase has ran that didn't include Peyton Manning were all in like the 20s. So yeah, it turns out if you have Peyton Manning, arguably, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, your offense is pretty good. It's weird how that works out. Brian, what about you? Who's the next guy that you'd be pounding the table for that should be next on this list?
I mean, honestly, I'd probably be going with Burrow here. I like kind of him being tied with T. Higgins, so we know he's going to have his clear number one for pretty much the duration that his first contract is under. Tyler Boyd is still under contract. Joe Mixon, if they could work out a deal, like Jared alluded to, he's a top 10 talent in the NFL at the position, and I think they can really kind of smooth things over with him. He's got an elite running back. He's going to have two really good wide receivers on the outside. They're building this team around what Joe Burrow succeeds at, which is what we saw him do at LSU. And I think for the first couple of years of his career, he could be one of those rookie quarterbacks who is fantasy relevant right away. Not like the first year he really struggles, and then the second year takes another step, and then the third year is when we see him blow up. I think as a rookie, he's going to be somebody in two quarterback rosters that you're going to want to get early, like one of the first, second quarterbacks off the board, just for the opportunities in the kind of offense they're going to want to put him in.
Yep. For me, Darrington Evans. I love him. App State running back. I think, you're all like, what?
Do you think? Do you think he's more than a change of pace guy as a pro?
Yeah, I think he could. I think he could be a feature back. Yeah, and I think
it's interesting with Derrick Henry, obviously, only on the 1 year deal.
Yep, I'm really curious. Like, if they don't extend him, I think there's a very legitimate shot that Evans is your starting running back in 2021. And I think this offense could be evolving. Obviously, they have A.J. Brown. They locked up Tannehill. Maybe they go a little more past. Like, maybe that's just the Titans fan in me that hopes they open it up a little bit. But when we saw the passing game, there was flashes. They have A.J. Brown. They kind of have Corey Davis. We'll see what happens there. Jonnu Smith. But I think Evans is legit. I think there's a lot to like about him. I think he's a guy that really fits in the modern NFL. Obviously as a pass catcher, but I think he can be a between the tackles guy. I think the fact that they used the 3rd round pick on him says a lot. I mean, he's basically 5'10", 200 pounds. That's, a typical running back size. That's not like, undersized by any means. If you go watch some of the tape, watch the South Carolina game, watch the North Carolina game, he runs really strong, knows what he's doing, patient, waits for his blockers, and then gets to the hole and goes. I think there's a legit shot. He's a compliment to Henry this year and a replacement for Henry next year.
This is definitely a trade down spot for you, because I got to imagine you can get him in the back half of the second round, right?
Right. And that's where I'm, if I have a late first, there's a potential for me to say, especially because I think for me, I think like I like Jefferson, but I think he's closer to that second tier than he is to the elite guys. And even if I had, 10 or 11, like I obviously like T. Higgins and Michael Pittman, I really want them on my teams. But if I have the 110 and I can get 2 second rounders and I can get a couple guys, I think that might be a move that makes sense, especially if Evans is one of those guys for me. Yeah,
that makes sense. I was going to say, for me, I think that my first big drop off comes after 7, after the 5 running backs, and then CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. Even as much as I like Jalen Reagor and T. Higgins, I think there's a bit of a drop off there. So I think that's a spot where it might make sense to trade down. And I do think, Higgins, I think, is going to go in the second round of Dynasty rookie drafts on average.
Yeah. So if you can, I'm curious to see how some of these Dynasty rookies. I'm getting one of my leagues prepped right now, but I'm curious to see. I might be finding some picks in that mid to late second, or even early second, just so I can soak up some of these guys, because I think there's a lot of guys in this class that would be first round rookie picks in a lot of drafts, but just because of the depth. Is there a guy you're looking at, Jared, as you're looking maybe say third or fourth round, that you think might have an upside shot, might have, if you keep finding yourself gravitating towards?
Yeah, Brian Edwards is someone I definitely liked. He has the excellent production profile at South Carolina. Had the injury concerns, but I like that the Raiders did spend a third round pick on him, and I think he has a good chance to emerge as the number 2 guy there, or even a 1B to Henry Ruggs pretty soon. So he's a guy I'm looking at. Antonio Gibson is a guy I like that they announced him as a running back, but I'm still a Darius Geis fan. I know he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but I just wonder what Gibson's path to immediate opportunity is. But he watch him last year. He didn't get a ton of touches, but when he did, he was awesome.
Yeah. I think Antonio Gandy Golden fits in that category as a guy who could be opposite McLaurin. I think who was the other? Lynn Bowden. I'm really curious to see what the Raiders use him with, because I think he could be an interesting piece that kind of does a lot of everything. Obviously, he's going to be a guy as a running back. Spell Josh Jacobs. We'll see kind of how they deploy him, but the Raiders are putting some interesting pieces together that it will be interesting to see kind of how that offense shakes out. Brian, what about you? Any other names you want to throw out before we get ready to hit the road?
Well, Jared stole Gibson from me. I see him as being like their early career, like Lance Dunbar that the Cowboys had. Like, he's going to see limited touches early on, but they're going to be using him a lot, kind of gimmick plays, and then he could be what Tavon Austin was supposed to be for them. He's kind of that quick jet sweep guy, just turn it upfield and blow past people. He's really elusive. And much like Jared, I also really like Darius Geis, so I'm really interested to see how much work they actually give him. I want to see him succeed, but I really think Gibson's upside is more so in the passing game. But if I'm looking at immediate impact, I like Keyshawn Vaughn for Tampa. Just being that pass receiving guy for Tom Brady.
It's not a bad role to fill for sure.
Yeah. I haven't given up on Ronald Jones yet either, though. So.
Me either. Yes, we got
Rojo all day.
This is a pro Ronald Jones podcast, so you're in good company. I was so happy to see the Bucs be a little not jump into the Jonathan Taylor, the J.K. Dobbins, the Cam Akers even pool and went with a guy who can be a compliment.
No, that's what I was going to say. I hate the Vaughn pick, because if the Bucs had taken one of those first 5 running backs, I would have been out on Ronald Jones and been totally fine with it. If they had waited till the 5th round to take one, I would have been all in on Rojo. Now it's I don't know. Third round, Keyshawn Vaughn. I did like Vaughn pre-draft. I think he's a guy. He's just solid. He's not special in any area, but he's a solid back. So that's just going to be a situation we have to watch this summer and hope one of those guys emerges as the clear leader.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, not the Bucs, are trying to replace Rojo, and I don't think the Bucs are trying to replace Rojo. So this is a pro Rojo podcast. He's going to be your starting running back, and he's going to be an absolute fantasy monster this year. That's what I keep telling myself, anyways.
You better learn how to pass block.
Jared, tell everybody where they can find all your work, check out the podcast, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at SmolaDS, SMOLADS, and then check out Draft Sharks. Podcast about once a week there. Our Dynasty rankings are for members only, but all of our Shark Bites, we broke down every rookie pick during the draft. Those are free, and then all of our pre-draft scouting reports on these rookies, those are all free. So they're before we know landing spots, but they take a look at the film, the measurables, college production, all that stuff.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking those out. Jared and the crew over there did an amazing job on all those pre-draft profiles. And if you're kind of, you don't know some of these names, you haven't watched all the tape, it's a really good resource to check out. And obviously if you are so inclined, make sure you become a DS Insider and obviously get all of Jared's fine work and all that good stuff over at Draft Stars. Jared, thank you so much for joining us once again. Always good to chat, and I'm sure we'll be doing this soon as the season rolls along.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was fun.
For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.